Good evening. Good evening, Planning Board and ETJ members and the public. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Thank you so much for making it and for the first Planning Board of 2026. Good to see everybody. So again, January is organizational meeting for the Planning Board. So we will start with the election of the chair of the Planning Board. We have to do this every January. Each year, Planning Board's rules and procedures requires that the board name a chair and vice chair for that year. Generally, this happens at the January meeting or the first regular meeting of each year if one is not held in January. The rules of procedure state that the staff shall call the meeting to order and conduct the meeting until the chair has been named. At that time, I will turn over the meeting to the chair and they will conduct the election of the vice chair. I will begin by accepting nominations from the floor for chair of the Planning Board. Nominations will be recorded in the order they are received. I will ask twice for any nominations before closing the nominations. At any time before closing the nominations, a member who has been nominated may decline their nomination. At that time, I will call for a vote on the first nomination. If the first nomination has a majority vote in favor, they will be seated as chair of the Planning Board. Once the chair has been named, they will take over the duties as chair and will conduct the election for the vice chair position. At this time, I would like to call nominations for the chair of the Planning Board.
I'd like to nominate Hope Ing for chair.
A second?
Second.
I will make the second call for nominations for the chair. I will make the third and final call for nominations for the chair. All right, seeing none, I will declare the nominations for chair and Planning Board closed. All those in favor, as Hope Ing as chair of the Planning Board for 2026, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Hope Ing as chair of the Planning Board again.
Thank you, thank you.
All right. All right, Hope, and you can continue your nomination for vice chair. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I would like to make the nomination for vice chair of the Planning Board. I will begin accepting nominations from the floor for the vice chair of the Planning Board. Nominations will be recorded in the order in which they are received. I will ask twice, more for any nominations before closing the nominations. At any time before closing the nominations, a member who has been nominated may decline their nomination. At that time, I will call for a vote on the first nomination. If the first nomination has a majority vote in favor, they will be seated as vice chair of the Planning Board. At this time, I would like to call for nominations for the vice chair of the Planning Board.
I nominate John Capes for vice chair.
Second. I will make a second call for nominations for the vice chair. I will make the third and final call for nominations for vice chair. Seeing none, I will declare the nominations for vice chair of the Planning Board closed. All those in favor of John Capes as vice chair of the Planning Board of 2026, please say aye. Any opposed, please say nay.
Aye.
John Capes, welcome as vice chair.
Thank you, ma'am.
Katie, would you please call roll, please?
Yes. Hope Ing,
Present.
John Capes,
Here.
Darlene Fetty,
Present.
Robert Garland,
Here.
Grant Gomez,
Here.
Peggy Levi,
Here.
Donald Dell,
Here.
Robert Kuhn is absent, Sherry Richmond is absent, Susan Stringer,
Here.
and Bill McLean.
Here.
Councilmember Glanville is present, a quorum is present.
Okay. May I make a motion to adopt the regular meeting minute schedule for, the meeting schedule for 2026?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Chair, we need a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
A second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. May I call a motion to approve the meeting minutes from November 10th from the regular Planning Board meeting?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Jose?
Good evening again. Since we've heard this case back in November, I'm going to provide a very quick summary of my report, and then that is going to be followed up by Amanda Hodian, which will provide an updated presentation with additional information. Just want to do a quick rundown. The request is for the properties.
Jose,
Yes?
are you removing?
Yes, thank you for a reminder. For ETJ members, you can excuse yourself now. We just needed you for the organizational items. You're more than welcome to sit with the public, or you could go home. It's up to you. You're more than welcome, whatever you please. But
We enjoyed having you.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Good to see y'all. Thank you so much.
Happy New Year to you too. Thank you for the reminder. Hope.
Yeah, sure.
Appreciate it.
Refreshments will be served in the parking lot. So.
Yeah.
Take care, y'all.
Alright. With that said, I'll go ahead and start my review of just of the staff presentation. That way, just to refresh your memory and the public's as well. This rezoning is for the properties located at 207, 209, 301, and 305 West Main Street, a total of 6.53 acres. Again, the zoning request is from a proposed rezoning from commercial Main Street transitional to Main Street to conditional zoning residential Main Street transitional. The proposed land use is multifamily. This is just an overview aerial of the property outlined in red. Again, some street views of the property from east and west, showing kind of the western and eastern boundaries of the project site. Again, a couple of land use facts. The site is vacant, however, it does include the Fraser House currently on one of the lots. It is bordered by single-family residential and commercial Main Street transitional and civic uses to the north. To the south, across the railway, it is bordered by single-family residential. On the east side of the property, there is Main Street zoning, and on the west, it is residential Main Street transitional, which is the same zoning that the applicants try to rezone to. Open space and tree conservation area, open space 1.584 acres, and the required tree conservation area is 0.196 acres. Obviously, it is going to be on Main Street, and Lennox Drive to the right is a private drive that they're also including an access out of. And in terms of historic data, the Fraser House, just as a reminder, is not a contributing structure. We did check with Guilford County and North Carolina State Office, and they confirmed that as well, and is the previous site of the Potter House. Again, the rezoning that is being selected, the intent of residential Main Street transitional is to allow for gradual transformation of existing low-density single-family to high-quality medium density residential, as higher density residential development is needed to support the growing town center. Again, the conditions remain unchanged, so these are still the same conditions that you saw back in November. Again, staff added that additional 14th condition to include a TIA report prior to it going to council. So that still is in place. Again, the applicant had 2 neighborhood meetings, one on September 30th and one on October 27th, to gather input and concerns about the proposed development. Here's the concept plan shown, and Amanda will further explain that as well. And then here are the future land use designations, and I saw that they were part of Amanda's presentation, so I'll just quickly kind of cover the description. This land use classification for West Main, all to the west, it is intended to accommodate a wide variety of low to moderate intensity uses, including offices, civic uses, attached residential development, and small format retail stores along this traditionally mixed-use corridor. In terms of the town center designation, the town center classification is intended to support and perpetuate the walkable mixed-use development pattern in the core of town. This area serves as economic, cultural, and civic heart of the community and includes a mix of businesses that cater to both residents and visitors to the community. Again, 3 guiding principles support this request. Specifically, the bullet points ensure that infill development is compatible with its surroundings from both use and aesthetic perspective, protect established neighborhoods from encroachment by adjacent and compatible land uses through the appropriate application of zoning regulations, ensure that Jamestown residents have access to housing that is appropriate for all stages of life and family situations, including housing for older residents to age in place, and last but not least, promote the development and retention of a wide range of housing types that meet the needs of current residents and future residents of all ages, abilities, family compositions, and socioeconomic backgrounds. Again, the decision before you is conditional zoning residential Main Street transitional, an appropriate zoning district to apply the situation. Is the request consistent with the comprehensive plan? Staff reviewed it, and we feel like the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and do recommend approval with that condition for a TIA prior to going to council. Do you have any questions for me before Amanda coming up and giving an updated presentation?
No.
Okay, all right. Amanda?
May I? Oh, okay. I was just about to call you the applicant, so here I come.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry if I was overeager. Thank you, Jose. My name is Amanda Hodiern. My address is at 804 Green Valley Road, Suite 200 in Greensboro, and I'm here tonight as authorized agent for the record property owners and on behalf of the applicant, Berkeley Communities, who you've met last time, Mr. Stafford Kelly and Mr. Sterling Kelly here with me if y'all want to wave. They are, of course, family-owned business that is run locally. Their offices are in Greensboro. They are also here in Jamestown by way of Courtyard Commons, which is a property that they operate just down West Main Street from this location. So as Jose said, of course, y'all spent a very generous amount of time with us back in November. So we do want to be intentional about moving the conversation tonight forward from where we left it that night and bringing you additional information as requested by way of the continuance. So that's my goal tonight, but by all means, all questions we're happy to answer, and feel free to just let us know any information that we can help provide if I don't provide it here off the top. So just as a reminder, this is our wide view vicinity map, the red star indicating the subject property. It's an assemblage, multiple parcels. We're going to look at them more specifically, but it's the general area, just over 6.5 acres, located there by the red star on the south side of West Main, north of the railroad corridor, between City Lake Park and Town Core, as we may commonly know it in its current state. The nature of the request, again, this is just review, just over 6.5 acres. The current zoning, it's got multiple zoning designations on it, MS for Main Street, and C-MST, which is commercial Main Street transitional, if I have that right. I know it's a lot of alphabet soup, so it's often helpful to just remind ourselves what we're saying and where we're starting. What we're asking for is conditional residential Main Street transitional. So it's a slight change that gets us where we'd like to go, as detailed last time and more tonight. That CZ is important. It means conditional. It means specified, curated, narrowly tailored to put forth a case that's appropriate with our what we've offered, and then further curated and massaged with input from the community, from you, eventually from council. That conditional platform allows that. So it's a full residentially scoped project. You've heard that. That's why we need to go to that R instead of the districts we have now. It's a design-led project. That means we have a hypothesis about land use, and we think design, intentional design, being very focused and careful about what it looks like is the key to making this work and keeping it appropriate for the area. And it's a conditional request. I've just talked about that. So that means it's further refined, further restricted to narrow that world of opportunity to something that can be digestible and appropriate for the area. And always remembering, of course, that zoning is permission to try. If a zoning is approved by your colleagues on the council, it doesn't mean that construction starts the next day and everything's ready to go. It means that the applicant has the correct tablecloth, if you will, to come in and try by submitting permit requests for site planning, for technical review processing that goes to the county for things like stormwater drainage, that goes to NCDOT for things like driveway permits, that goes to Jose, his colleague Paul over in engineering, to ensure all the other aspects of your development code can be met. And that supersedes zoning. So just because the zoning says, yes, you can have these uses, yes, you can have up to this many units, it still has to fit within the parameters of the development code. So that wins the day in terms of what can actually happen. Always important to remember that. All right, so where we've been, you heard us on November 10th. I've talked about that. We did spent a long time covering the basics of the request, the theory of the request. Again, we're asking to go from commercial and this more commercially slanted Main Street transition to something that's all in on residential. So why? Why did we think that was appropriate? We talked about that a lot last time. We talked about the design narrative. I said this, we think this is a design-led project, so what was our thought process on how we came up with the design that we felt like was worth putting in front of you last month? We talked about the summary of the community outreach process, because that was a big part of that design narrative, and how we integrated that and got to what we all looked at and are going to look at again tonight. We did a long time, a lot of detail on all those zoning conditions. You remember it was 2 pages, 14 conditions. We talked through them in detail because that is a big part of the case. That's what, that's the meat of the case. That's how it's restricted. That's how it's curtailed and customized. That's how it implements the design that we are putting forth. And we talked about the comprehensive planning guidance and how that informs the theory, and we think provides the reasonableness basis that goes hand in hand with your comprehensive plan consistency finding that staff has put forth as consistent. It was continued to December 8th. That meeting, of course, was canceled for inclement weather, and that, of course, brings us here to tonight. And I think, based on the feedback that you guys provided us last time, what we want to get through tonight, our understanding is more what would it look like, a better job of showing what the vision is, more specifics on the input and information that a transportation study will provide and how that informs the process, and more understanding of our land use analysis. Why not more commercial or more mixed use was a question put forth, so a better understanding of how we vetted that and came to put forward and continue on this path for a residential proposal in front of you, and how we defined those considerations. So the proposed zoning conditions, you've heard from staff, they haven't changed because we're still talking about what we talked about last time. So this is always open as a platform to help us get to where we want to go. So conditions can always be added to, but they can't be removed. So all these restrictions that we've raised our hand and said we're willing to do, those are still on the table, but we can always add more as we learn more about where we hopefully together want this to go. The rezoning sketch plan, and here I'm just going to pause a minute, if I may. And to the point of better than last time, if I may hand you up, just so y'all can look while I'm talking in case that's far away.
Thank you.
These are just printouts of a few of the key slides we're going to go through.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is the illustrative rezoning sketch plan. You've heard about it, you've seen it. What this is it's a required element of conditional zoning. So we're all visual people. It helps us understand 14 conditions written out. So this is a visual aspect that your code requires to understand how zoning conditions may manifest and what they'll look like, how it all comes together. Again, this is not a site plan approval. If a zoning is approved, it doesn't mean that this gets to get built the next day. It means that these guys get to work and tell their engineers to draw this up and engineer it and submit it through the TRC process. But this does represent the furthest extent of what the proposal could look like. So we talked a lot last time about these mansion-style units, these mansion-style units on the front. We talked about this plaza center that's in a condition. We talked about this building in the back and how it's focused around a courtyard and this sort of terminal vista promenade that it sets up. We talked about these vegetative buffers on either side. So all of those things are shown here on the sketch plan. They're narrative conditions, but we wanted to do a better job of really trying to express to you guys our vision. So we've put together some more collateral graphic documentation here. So looking first at that front row of the site plan, the mansion-style units that you heard so much about, this is a representation, the idea of hidden density or missing middle housing. You probably all heard those buzz terms in the housing industry, are certainly not new, not ours. However, one of the most reputable and I would say industry-leading design firms that's putting these plans out there is a firm called Victor Dover. They've done a lot of stuff here in the area. They've looked at stuff here in Jamestown. So we looked to that playbook when we thought about these mansion-style, hidden density type of units. And this is a design graphic from his work where he did that type of housing in another community. So this is a great illustration of how that front row of those three, what we call mansion style, fronting up on the road, how that would look in a streetscape format, so that you don't just have to see it in 2D from above. You can try to envision it here. These are the three real-world examples. These are built and existing in real life, based off of this type of graphic rendering when something was in the visioning stage. So just an example of trying to give you a better contextualization of how that would work. Some key aspects, you see they look like single family. They have front porches. They have the direct access from front door to sidewalk. They have a single front door. So all those aspects and attributes that say single family to the visual survey rather than multifamily. And they also say streetscape, walkability, sense of place, identity, and really create that type of corridor feel and check a lot of boxes that we read about and that we talked a lot about when we looked through your Envision Jamestown plan. Again, looking at your plan, let's move next to this area here, the streetscape again, the plazas, the sidewalks. So your downtown has a lot of brick sidewalks throughout, but it's got some holes where they're missing. This development will connect that sidewalk all across the front here, all across the frontage. There's a brick sidewalk on the other side, so it'll match that. And not only will it connect and provide a sidewalk that's currently missing, but it'll be that brick sidewalk that is, certainly a step up from your normal cement sidewalks and certainly speaks to that Jamestown character and feel and aesthetic that I think is so important to you, your residents, and to folks who want to build a community here that captures what they like and what residents like about Jamestown. And also creating a, sort of an infiltration from that streetscape into the project to give that inside-outside feeling and orient the project to that walkability. So let's look at those aspects. Here, again, this is all just pulled from things that are guiding our design principles and what we want this to be like and look like. So sharing that with you, this is just a brick sidewalk running along a streetscape, connecting, you can see, to those private sidewalks that go up to front doors. White picket fences, not quite exactly like y'all's, but obviously, certainly invokes the thinking of what you guys have here in Jamestown, and that really rings out true when you drive through this area. You saw that gazebo element here in the middle. That's promised by condition. So just some ideas of what that would look like. Again, connecting to that brick sidewalk. This would be brick. I couldn't find a picture that had brick, but here we go. This would be better. So just showing how that connects out to that public sidewalk, invites the public in, creates gathering space for both residents and passersby alike to create a sense of place, a sense of identity, a walkability, invites walkability, creates accessibility for people moving back and forth through this corridor that's so important for the town core, for that West Main Street corridor that's talked about in the comprehensive plan. And then just, benches, seating opportunities, to define that area and really create a sense of purpose there. So lastly, moving back to the rear of the site, creating that village cluster type of site planning where you have different building forms, but with enough unity and cohesiveness to create something that doesn't feel like chaos. We want to look at what we're talking about for that back building, and this is, you saw this last time, but I think too small and too quickly. So this is the design inspiration for that middle building that you would see as you look through, and it creates that courtyard. So something like this here that brings forward the dormer attributes, the front porch attributes, the shutters, varying roof lines and articulation, balconies, things that hearken all those residential aspects that would carry forward from the vernacular of those manor units on the front. So that, yes, this is a more intense, if you will, multifamily building. It's not one of those manor units, but it still maintains a lot of key features to create that visual aesthetic appeal that are in keeping with not only the manor houses, but the feel of the corridor and that small town character, as opposed to some other more traditional suburban garden style apartment units we might all be familiar with. Transportation impact analysis. Again, moving kind of to that second bullet point of what I think we could do to help bring forward more information tonight. So the final transportation impact analysis is prepared and provided at the city council level as per your rezoning requirements. However, we can talk about a lot of the things we do know tonight and how that's going to inform and integrate into the process. So to do that, let's think about, what is this tool? What are the aspects of it? How is it used? So the transportation impact analysis, it starts with a scoping meeting. That's where a traffic engineer, a licensed, sealed professional traffic engineer hired by these guys, comes in and meets with Jose, the town staff, as well as NCDOT, because they're the ones who control West Main Street, right? So comes in and does what's called a scoping meeting. That's where they say, hey, here's what we're thinking in terms of uses. That meeting for us obviously said a multifamily project with, I think at the time we had it scoped, we were talking about 150 or 160 units, because you want to start bigger and get more narrowly refined. So we had that scoping meeting, and that's where they tell us, okay, make sure you think about new background traffic generated by this project over here. Make sure you know about this new connection of roads existing over here. And then they tell us what intersections to study and what parameters of the study area need to be included, so that our engineer isn't just working in a vacuum in a bubble with their blinders on, doing what they think makes sense without checking with the agencies and the people who are actually going to review and decide and be the ones tasked with implementing an approval of a TIA or a review of a TIA that makes sense for the town and for the district. So that scoping meeting happens first. They tell us what to study. So our engineers go out, and the first thing they do is data collection, traffic counts. You may have seen the cords across the street and boxes for other projects. You may have seen people out with cameras. So they have all kinds of tools that collect that data. They collect it at every intersection that we're told to study. So in this case, that was these 4 intersections here. This is West Main Street, and it's Dillon to the south, Ragsdale to the north. This is a signalized intersection. That's the gas station there in the point, in case you need to get more oriented. Here, moving over to the full west side, this is the intersection of West Main and Forestdale on the north, Lennox Drive here on the south. So this is currently unsignalized. And then they had us study the intersection. It's a 3-legged intersection of West Main and Potter, and then the driveway intersection that's proposed to be created by the new driveway of the project, as shown in our site plan in front of you. So that's the 4 pressure points they asked us to study or look at. In this case, based on the community input, we heard a lot about concerns about, yeah, data collection's great, the intersections are great, but the school here is an X factor. It's a whole different ball game in terms of what's going on and when it's going on and what the traffic does for those carpool, pickup, drop-off, buses, those types of things. So we said, yeah, okay, that makes sense. We need to make sure that gets folded in. So we went back and asked our traffic engineers to count again during the school hours. So because this school, it's an elementary school, they start a little earlier than what is traditionally captured by what's called the AM peak, when most of us leave and go to work. Elementary school drop-offs start a little sooner than that. Certainly people who go to work at that facility are getting there a little sooner than the traffic engineers define as the AM peak. So we looked at those intersections sooner, and we looked at them in the afternoon during the dismissal period, rather than the 5 to 7 p.m. peak. Or 4 to 6. We looked at the 1 to 3 that captures that dismissal window, so that we would have that data collection to augment, not replace, but to augment the data collection we already did for the more traditional study parameters. And then, so that's that rescoping, re-data collection, and then what will come next is the analysis. So we've got, 30 pages, 2 different trips, 2 different time periods worth of data collection. We've got the studied intersections. We've got informational interviews conducted with school officials to tell us about what their traffic management plans are, what the routing is that folks have to follow when they come in and out of the carpool lanes. And then all that goes into an analysis and worked up using all the best engineering required practices and protocols. That gets submitted to NCDOT and says, here's what we think is the best way to facilitate, mitigate, and manage the traffic impacts created by this project. And then again, that's not just one and done and decided, because our engineer presents it. It's presented as a proposal, if you will, or a submittal. And NCDOT, with input from the town of Jamestown, gets to vet that and decide if they want more from us, if they want us to relook at something, if they disagree. So all of those things result in what's called a reviewed and approved traffic study that says, hey, okay, here's what's coming in, here's what's being created by it, here's what it does, here's what you're going to do to make sure that functions in a way that we're all comfortable with in our role as agency and representative for the town and for the state. So digging in a little bit, trip generation, we looked at that in terms of our proposed land use. We also looked at a few comparative uses because, again, we're here talking tonight about land use, and every land use that's put on the table would be, as compared to when you're thinking about reasonableness and how the town wants to grow, how you achieve your objectives. You would also want to think about, okay, what would an alternative land use look like in this regard? So we've also got some analysis of some alternative uses. Raw data, we have some NCDOT existing volumes. This is very important. This is very interesting. So a key feature here, I know this is small, I'm sorry, is the West Main Street existing volumes. So looking back all the way to 2003, you had a 14,000 average daily trip volume on West Main Street. 13,000 in 2019, 12,000 in 2021. So it's in that high mid-teen range. All of a sudden we get to 2023 and it drops to 8,300. We get to 2025 and it drops to 7,602. Well, what happened in December of 2022? The Jamestown bypass opened for, among many reasons, one of them to relieve congestion and to create more efficient traffic movement, to put it around Jamestown rather than through it. And so this is an exact data point showing you how that did happen and has occurred and has a real reduction in passerby, background traffic, just average daily volume going across in front of this site. And that's not measured just West Main Street as a whole. Obviously, that's a long road. It's measured right exactly at this point. You can look on the NCDOT website. There's a database. You can click on exact increments, and it'll show you the counts for those exact locations. These counts are taken right at this property site, right in the block between Dillard Ragsdale and Forestdale Lennox. So this is reliable data that does inform what's our background traffic, what's our existing conditions here in terms of congestion. So next, the traffic counts I told you about, those will get folded in. Right now, the traffic counts that we're seeing, of course, we've got the AM, PM peak, we've got that passerby traffic that you can see there from the number, and then, of course, I told you we've got those school counts that we took. So all of that will get folded in. But what I can tell you, we also did some driver behavior, information collection. Interview is probably not the best word, because we wanted to understand what is the school doing, what is their traffic pattern, so what are we going to be folding into? And so what we learned is that the school's rule, what they implement and set up is that starting at 7 a.m. when the teachers and the staff get there and put the cones out, parents can come in from the south, Potter Road, and they have to proceed to the lower, actually let's get back to the vicinity map. So they come in here at Potter, they can proceed to this lower area. This is only for parent drop-off, so no staff, no buses here. So they would come in, proceed down to this little roundabout, drop off, come back out. They have to turn north. They have to turn right. So they're not allowed, to turn left, go back south, and exit onto the West Main Street Road after 7 a.m. once the staff is in place and putting in their traffic circulation rules. So that means they head north, and of course they can either go on up and take Perry Road or Ganaway to get back to Guilford, or they can cut over on Brookdale and then go back down south on Forestdale to get back to West Main Street. So what we know is that when that is in place, any traffic that's emerging or re-ingressing onto the West Main Street corridor from school is doing so at Forestdale, not Potter. Similarly, the buses are also required to come in from the north, so either turn on Forestdale, go across Brookdale, come in here. This is where the buses do their thing, not down here, or they have to come down Potter. So when the teachers and staff is there implementing their plan, they are doing what they can to manage and create a flow that really sends more traffic to Forestdale than to Potter. to ensure some sort of orderly fashion there. So that's helpful information so that we know what they're already doing and where the bigger pressure point is at Forestdale rather than Potter, based on those mechanisms that they're putting in place. We have some observed data. You know, we heard in our community meetings that queuing gets really bad on West Main Street during those carpool hours. You know, this is just one day, so I'm sure that happens. But one day that our engineer was there, you know, they only observed at most were 4 cars on West Main to turn left onto Potter in the 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. hour when school was in that morning arrival period. So we did not witness that. Not to say it doesn't happen, but just to kind of understand, you know, what's happening on a regular, everyday basis and how it's being controlled and what are the factors, the key factors that need to be understood and mitigated. Identified analysis. So again, we talked about those 4 points that we would have to study and the intersections, so that'll be all implemented when the analysis comes together. But what we do know already is that based on the trip generation, and I'm going to hand that up to you here in a moment, based on the trip generation from our proposed use, which is in the AM peak, you've got a total of 66 trips. That's 16 trips entering the project, 50 exiting. In the PM peak, you've got a total of 80 trips. That's 50 entering and 30 exiting. So using that trip generation on top of the existing background data, which is the traffic counts, the daily volumes, what's picked up by all those study data collection points, we know that this intersection is not meeting the signal warrants. So when a traffic signal goes up, that's based on a series of warrants that NCDOT pre-dictates. So we don't get to decide, town doesn't get to decide. NCDOT has a metric of what they call warrants or triggers to put in a traffic signal. So it's not meeting those on a regular basis. They did ask us to go ahead and study the PM peak. That is to say, you know, in certain instances, if the PM peak is bad enough, they'll use that to override the lack of other warrant or triggers and see if that warrants a signal. So we are studying that at their request. But what we already know is that the trip generation, in addition to the existing average daily volume, is not triggering a signal warrant analysis at this location. So that's just a snapshot of what we do know already in terms of the traffic study, so that you can understand what types of things it looks at, in what kind of detail it will look at them, and then how that will get implemented and folded in to our eventual site planning. And that will go on and on. So just because the traffic study may say one thing now, by the time a site plan comes forward, that gets looked at constantly. So if something crazy has changed or some new development came in that changed the whole north side of the street, then we would have to adjust to that, because the traffic obviously is a comprehensive thing that has to be looked at, you know, universally. So that's a moving, fluid aspect. That's why I always say zoning's just the first step. We still got to get through site planning, because stuff like that is always on the table. So determining land use. Why residential? Why not include some commercial? What about mixed use? These are some questions that were asked last time, and some of the thoughtful dialogue, which we appreciated, and that we understood you guys were trying to wrap your heads around as you considered this. So in order to answer that question, I know we spent a ton of time last in November about why we felt like residential, the theory of the case, if you will, our hypothesis, why we felt like that made sense. So tonight I wanted to focus on the flip side. You know, not why we think this is a great idea, but we were asked, did you consider these other things? Well, yes, we did, so we wanted to explain it to you from that standpoint. How did those considerations go? So to do that, we looked at what are the by right uses currently. A by right use in zoning means it can happen today without any of this, without this permission to try step, meaning we go right to that site plan aspect. We go straight to development permits, no public hearings or requested changes. So those are called by right uses. So we looked at what are those by right uses currently, because, as you all know, this property's been vacant a long time. It's been on and off the market a long time. So Common sense, realism tells us we have to think about what could happen right away. We know this property is in play. We know the players are ready to do something, so we have to think about, and it has to inform our decision to think about, okay, what could happen if we decide that this residential theory isn't the way to go? What does that leave as reasonable, realistic expectation of other alternatives? We wanted to look at how does commercial use, because that's largely what it's zoned now, how does that relate to the town's other goals? How do we know the town's other goals? Because of your comprehensive planning. All of those policy guidelines that inform future land use, that tells us, that's our, glimpse into, not just us, everyone. That's our glimpse into understanding what a town wants to see for itself, how it wants to grow, how it wants to embrace various objectives. How does that commercial use relate to feedback we heard in the community meetings, and how does it relate to traffic concerns? Because we did hear a lot about traffic, about the school, about congestion on West Main, about any project here exacerbating perceived traffic congestion issues. And then we wanted to frame this idea of mixed use. Why do we need to look at it? Why is it important? And how would we get there? So looking first at what could happen now, this is the existing zoning map. So this, again, is the subject property, 1, 2, 3, 4 properties here, and they're zoned. This first one is CMST, that's commercial, Main Street transitional, and the dark purples are Main Street. So that's our 2 zoning districts. So when we look at those 2 districts, a lot of the uses are the same. There are a few more intense uses that are allowed only in that light blue, right there on the corner of Lennox Drive, Forest Trail, West Main. So this is just a quick rundown of some of the current by right uses. This isn't all of them by any means, but these are the ones that jumped out at me as the type of uses that would go on these type of sites. What do I mean when I say that? I mean the type of uses that could afford to develop from scratch, could afford to actually build a new building, go through a site planning process with engineering, with putting in infrastructure improvements, that sort of thing. And could actually be a viable new development. So ABC store, ambulance, fire rescue station, auto supply sales, we know that. We've got one of those there already. Bars, we know that. The existing Fraser House actually was a bar for a time. We learned that in our community meetings. Billiard parlors, bingo game, et cetera. A bowling lane, bowling alley, that's only applicable to the one on the corner, the light blue. So anytime you see that different color font, that's only that corner. Building supply cells, bulk mail and packaging, a bus terminal on that corner, coin-operated amusement, that's, you all know, we've had some of those. A gas station, again, only on that corner. A drugstore, we've got one of those. There's a Walgreens here, so you know. Equipment rental on the corner, a family care facility, a funeral home or a crematorium there on the corner. Game rooms, video game, coin-operated, a grocery store, a hotel motel, kennels, pet grooming there on the corner, a laundromat, a pawn shop or a used merchandise store, portable storage units, police station, a drive-through restaurant for that light blue parcel on the corner, police station, sorry I forgot my E, I just noticed, a sit-down restaurant without a drive-through, so fast casual, go in, sit down, eat, leave, retail sales, service station on the corner, sports and recreation indoor, vocational business schools. Yes, there's a florist allowed. Yes, there's a bakery, an architect shop. I'm not trying to assert or create any misperception that those types of uses aren't allowed. What I'm saying is that the idea of those small type of users who generally move into existing space, it's unlikely realistically that they would come in and develop a parcel like this to create a spot to run that type of business out of. Just the volume and expense, what it costs to get that up and running versus, that type of what we call a pro forma does not indicate that this site would be viable for those types of uses. It's not to say that if some of the rest of this got up and running, there couldn't be additional space co-located that could host some of those other type of less intense commercial uses. So again, we're looking at this as why did we want to pivot away from the commercial allowances that are already there? Frankly, why would we want to downzone from these more intense allowances? Well, it's because when we read your comprehensive plan, when we think about what we heard at the community meetings, this isn't it. This doesn't seem to talk about small-town character, walkability, something that doesn't rely on a car, something that creates sense of place and puts forth the needs and lifts up downtown and all the residents and all these things that your guidelines talk about when we go through the plan. So great segue to envision Jamestown Comprehensive Plan. That's, of course, the other thing we need to look at this up against when we think about what's the highest and best use, what makes sense to get us to the point that the envision plan talks about. So our districts here, our land use classifications, our town center, that encompasses the two parcels here, and then West Main, that's the pink. That encompasses the large vacant parcel here and the corner parcel at Lennox Drive. So just reading about those. Town center, it's focused on traditional downtown area. It extends along Main Street from Ragsdale to Guilford Road. That's an important sentence because it's not even our property. It's to the east of our property. So it's interesting that the town center is described differently here than what the map shows. It's described as being here on up to Guilford, but yet the map shows it to here. And that's okay. That's because we get it. Town core needs to be fluid. It's going to be reactionary to the development and to that transition and how that corridor relates to the rest of the community. Talks about this is intended to support and perpetuate walkable, mixed use, a development pattern in the core of the town that serves the economic, cultural, civic heart of the community, businesses that cater to residents and visitors. And it goes on, you can read more of that. Then West Main, which is that light pink, looking further to the west. It's the future land use classification that's applied to the majority of this corridor along West Main, defined as Ragsdale Road all the way out to the edge where you get to High Point, which is Penny Road. This land use classification is intended to accommodate a wide variety of low to moderate intensity uses. So again, we're talking about a range of uses, including office, civic, attached residential, small format retail along this mixed use corridor, and a focus on the National Historic District development should be sensitive to that historic context and blend in and utilize styles that speak and support that unique character. So that's the vision, if you will. That's the directive that we took as our marching orders and that we understand a future land use should be applied against. We also wanted to look at the Envision Jamestown guiding principles, because future land use is one thing, but it's all the principles that really tell us all the micro goals. So if I could approach again, this is just a printout of that, straight from your comprehensive plan, the 14 guiding principles.
Thanks.
And as I looked through this, the reason I wanted to mention it briefly, as I looked through this, these are subjective. This is a guiding visionary document, right? It's not prescriptive. It's not an ordinance that says you shall do this, you shall do that. It's a guiding visionary document meant to be utilized by yourself, your colleagues on city council, your colleagues at staff as they evaluate requests for their consistency to say, hey, does this get us further or closer to this long-range vision that we have for ourselves? It's micro goals. It's not just land use. It's micro goals about housing variability and diversity, about keeping adequate staffing levels, about keeping a police department and a fire department that maintains the strong sense of safety here, about leveraging populations at centers like GTEC, about creating greenway corridors and an open space that works together. So it's a broad range of micro goals, right? The point is, as I look through this, and again, we could debate about it all night, and I'm sure that there's different takes on it. So I'm not asserting my view is the only view. What I'm asserting is that this is where the debate and the advocacy has to start from and end at. We need to always ask ourselves, are we getting closer or farther from these 14 things? And as I look at this, I've checked off about 85% that I could make a strong case we're getting closer to. And I'd be happy to do that, but I don't want to assume that y'all want to hear that from me. So I'll just put that out there. There's some obvious ones like diversity of housing, about creating walkability, sense of place, but we could get into some of the more micro ones. I'm sure you all have other opinions too. But the point is, that's what we need to understand is our touchstone. And are we getting further or closer to that? I submit to you, this project, this type of request is taking you a lot closer to these goals. So some of these goals are things that have nothing to do with this project, right? Some of them are about hiring more law enforcement or about purchasing more greenway area. How do you do that? With money, with revenue. So that's why it's always such an important aspect of your budget considerations, tax base, tax assessments. And I bring this up because it was asked last time, how does this play into that? So let's just take a quick look. This is Courtyard Commons. That's the other project owned by my client. Remember, this isn't new. It was an older property, renovated, so the value was increased some by that renovation, but certainly, this is not the same value as a brand-new type of development would have. So what you see here, it's 5.3 acres, so a pretty similar acreage, especially by the time you back out the railroad corridor of our project, which you remember is 6.5 acres. The total assessed value, if I can read that, it's around 6.2, and this is taken from the tax bill. Your total tax there is around 97, I think, with 41, sorry, say again? 41. Well, I was saying the total, but yeah, so you split it with Guilford County. Total revenue coming to Jamestown is $41,132 and some change off of this older apartment project. Now, compare that with a single parcel retail use, like the drugstore. This is the auto zone located here, which is what you can get by right, which can develop today. Therefore, we have to assume is likely to happen. That is a just over $1 million assessed value. Jamestown's getting $7,000 of tax revenue off that. Now again, that's just 1 acre, 1 parcel, so assume you do that 3 or 4 times on the parcel. 7 times 4 is 28,000. So you're still not even equal to the tax revenue from an older renovated apartment community. Let's look at a new one, Millicent, Maine. This is 8 acres, 8.4, so it's a little larger, so keep that in proportion. Your taxable value is just under 24 million. Is that right, if I'm seeing my numbers from here? Yeah, 23.5 million assessed value, $154,293.42 coming to Jamestown. So when we think about the fact that this will also be new construction valued at a higher rate than that old construction, and Stafford can tell you all about the numbers and analysis he's run, we're projecting about $145,000 of tax revenue from this type of project to the town of Jamestown. Now, why is that important? Because it allows you to meet your other goals. That's why diversity of housing and tax base is so important. Yes, it's important to meet all your residents at their housing needs, where they want to be, where they can find a home that works for them, where they can find an entry point into the community, where they can find a place for themselves that works when they no longer want to be a homeowner and maintain that. But it's also about tax base, to create that tax variability and diversification to produce the revenue and the income stream to do all these other things that you want to do that requires a healthy budget. And you don't always want to be putting that on your existing residents by upping the tax rate all the time. New development should help support that. And multifamily, and you can see this, there's tons of articles about it out in the open interwebs, if you will, about how multifamily is the tax revenue goldmine for communities. So I just wanted to show that that is true here because we talked about it a bit last time, and I made a statement that I wanted to back up. So contextualizing mixed use. So I heard last time your plan looks good. We hear what you're saying, but why not mixed use? It really feels like this should be mixed use. And if I understood the questions correctly last time, I think that was coming from, when I asked myself why this question about mixed use, I think that was coming from this language, right? The town center as our future land use is intended to support a wide range of uses in a mixed use corridor. So I see that here. I see it over here in West Main where it talks about a mix of uses, right there, mixed use corridor. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the basis of asking that very good question is because, hey, you're talking about our comprehensive plan, staff's talking about it, that's part of our analysis. Why aren't we talking about mixed use or at least considering it? So that's the why. Where? Where should we be looking at mixed use? Well, based on the language, it tells us we should be looking at it in the town center, intended to support and perpetuate this mixed-use development pattern in the core of the town, which is defined from Ragsdale Road to Guilford Road, right? So from here to here, we're being asked to look at a range of uses. And let's go ahead and say here too, because that's colored town core on the map, so we'll throw that in. So your comprehensive plan is saying, hey, this whole area that we call town core should be a range of uses that create a mixed-use corridor. In other words, it's not saying each finite, isolated site has to be in and of itself mixed use. It's saying the corridor, the fabric, the town core as it works together is supposed to be mixed use. So let's look at West Main. Where? Again, this is about a mixed-use corridor. It's wanting us to see a wide variety of low-to-intensity uses, including office, civic, attached residential development, small format retail throughout this mixed-use corridor. Again, the language tells us that it's defined from Ragsdale Road to Penny, which is off the screen here, but it's this whole corridor that it's asking us to, emphasize mixed use. So within the area, create a corridor that has a mix of uses. It's not directing that each sole site unilaterally has to accomplish mixing of uses. So I submit to you that, we're doing a pretty good job of that. Jamestown, in both the West Main corridor and in the town core, you've got a vibrant mix of uses. You've got, let's do town core first. You've got restaurants, you've got nightlife or happy hour, you've got your government offices here, you've got your library, you've got gas station, you've got offices here in the adaptive reuse, the comfort heating and air, the bait and tackle. So you've got a wide range, integrated fabric here of all kinds of uses. You don't have a lot of housing though. The only housing is more in the West Main corridor with the single family neighborhood that focuses around Forestdale and Potter. You've got the townhomes up on Ganaway just to the north. You've got, there was one other community I remembered. Oh, of course, Lenox Square. Yeah, just to the west. So all the housing is already forced to the outskirts of that town core where you're asking for a mix of uses. So I think the one that's left to try and create that full range is housing, and that housing creates bodies and people to spend money and time and frequent these other uses and to be able to walk to them, which was another directive. Same thing with your corridor. You've got City Lake Park, you've got the library, you've got the school, Jamestown Elementary, you've got these small format isolated retail users that the plan told us about, Walgreens, the auto store. You've got a lot of these single family homes here that front on West Main that have turned over into commercial. There's an insurance agent here, there's a hair salon or a barber shop. You've got Courtyard Commons here, of course, that there's a residential use in the area, I failed to mention before. So you've got a large range of uses here too. And what do we notice about these uses? They're starting to make a walkable corridor. You could imagine, if your family's visiting in town, you bring them into town, you have lunch downtown, you walk up to the City Lake Park, you go fishing at the dam. Before that, you stop and get your bait and tackle from the shop. So we've got a nice little corridor here that you can imagine people using. Wouldn't it be great to fill in the sidewalk? Wouldn't it be great to create more people there, to create more energy and vibrancy to that land use pattern that is described when we look at those two land use descriptors? So again, mixed use is important, but I think we need to be careful about how we're contextualizing it and how we're expecting it to come to fruition. So how is the one here that I've highlighted, because of course, the devil's in the details. How do we get there? And what I want to point out to you, I've been talking a lot about horizontal mixed use, and what I want to point out is that that's the only kind of mixed use that your ordinance allows. You have no vertical mixed use in your ordinance. So the idea, if somebody was standing here tonight presenting a vertical mixed use little village with, retail general store on the bottom and an architect on the middle and apartments above, I wouldn't dispute that that'd be great. That would fit into this corridor wonderfully. It'd be wonderful. But it doesn't exist. There's not a single zoning district or mechanism in the ordinance that would allow me to come forward and get a vertically mixed use, vertically integrated mix of uses approved. So what does that mean? It means I have to write a text amendment and put it before you and get that adopted. And then I have to get a rezoning to the zoning district where that text has been implemented. So all of those steps make it less and less likely that that's going to happen. I'm not saying it's not a good idea. I'm not saying it wouldn't work as good as perhaps what we're proposing. What I'm saying is when you think about the likelihood and you're evaluating what is the best way and an efficient way to get to where we want to go, I would submit to you that holding out for that vertically mixed use idea is a vision and a goal that's not going to come to us in our lifetimes. So when we think about balancing all of that, balancing the town core, the West Main vision, the land use pattern that exists, the goals, these 14 goals and all of the 5 or 6 micro goals underneath them, when we think about how we get there on balance, we're submitting, and the reason we're here is where we submit that our request does that. It's the bird in the hand, if you will, versus the by right permitted uses that could happen, you know, if we wanted to leave this to chance market forces. People are going to know that a residential use was not favorably received. They're going to understand that that's not the will of the town, of course, as is your prerogative. What's that going to tell the development market? It's going to tell them, well, then we need to work with what we've got. And so that tells us the range of uses that's allowed that is more likely than not to happen. That's all. And I think that as a town and a government body, we have to remember that, you know, it's not a development commission. It's not a joint private-public partnership where you can go out and take bids and solicit a certain type of project. Rather, you are tasked with evaluating the projects that raise their hand and come to you and say, hey, can we make this work? Is there a way that it makes sense for us to curate something together that helps you get to where you want to be? And so we've raised our hand. We're asking to be that chance and to be that partner by our own volition and to help you get to these goals and help you implement a lot of these aspects to bolster that town core West Main vision in a way that's curated, minimized, and sensitive to the character of the area and the scale. So we're here for questions. Oh, I did say, I'm sorry, I said I would hand this up. This is just a trip generation data table. Top table is our proposed use at 138 units. The next one is a sit-down restaurant. On the back is a gas station. So that just shows you, if we're, you know, just one micro look at land use comparison, highest and best use, if we're talking about, you know, things like traffic congestion, we need to think about what those other land uses do to that discussion. And of course, as you can imagine, a gas station blows every other use out of the water even combined.
Thank you. Oops. Sorry.
Very good. Thank you, ma'am.
I think Sterling just had a couple comments he wanted to make to wrap up, and then we're here for questions and any other information we can provide.
Thanks, Amanda. While Amanda was building our case to put before you for your consideration, I was on your website looking for when the next meeting date was going to be. And I stumbled into a section on the website that lays out the minutes of your meetings, the minutes of the town council meetings. And I thought, well, I wonder how far back this goes. I began to be really real estate aware in Jamestown in 2012. That's when we were being considered to be, serve as the property manager for what was then called Jamestown Village Apartments. which was a difficult, challenging property. And it had a terrible reputation. It had a collection of residents who really were allowed to sort of run the show, and it was really going down the wrong road. What I realized as I got into the minutes, I flipped back and said, I wonder when it was we had put Courtyard Commons now under contract, and it was 2014. One day off today, Matt Johnson was sitting in Jose's seat and reported to the town council on January 13th, 2014, that the planning board had recommended unanimously that we move forward with our project, which was great. We had undertaken a much larger major renovation and reposition of an apartment community in West Greensboro on West Friendly Avenue. And so we really had a playbook that we could pull out and use at Courtyard Commons. Actually, we had already begun the work there. And we'd whitewashed the red brick, and we'd begun to replace windows and doors and really remake the property. And while we put a lot of emphasis on the physical environment of what we do, we pay the most attention to the people. And that is really, when we talk about the people, it's our staff who serve the residents at the property, and of course the residents themselves. And we have learned, it sounds so obvious, but a lot of people don't get it, and I didn't get it for a while, but when you do a good job of listening to your customers, and then you give them what that they value most, you're gonna have a great product. And that's what we have focused, Westport Berkeley Communities has focused on for 40 plus years, is building great residential communities. We've begun to use the word neighborhood because we think it does a better job of capturing the kind of environment we're trying to create. So we think this is an outstanding opportunity for Jamestown, and we want to be part of it. That is the development of this new residential community, which we're really committed to, as Amanda said, put an emphasis on design, because design, I've come around on this, design really, I think, is the key to livable communities. And here we are today, 12 years after the town council approved this unanimously for the rezoning of Courtyard Commons. That property has been extraordinarily successful for our company. I think it's changed the whole tone and tenor of that part of West Main Street, which is the reason we've been so interested in expanding our presence in Jamestown. We have two buildings under construction right now at the Lenox Square, empty concrete slabs. We're looking toward a June 1 finish there, and then we would love to be able to move toward development of this community and have our plans completed. So we are big Jamestown fans, and hope we'll get your concurrence on what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay, let's see. The planning board would like to open the public hearing to anyone that would like to speak regarding the rezoning request. Please state your name and address and adhere to the 3-minute time limit.
My name is Rich Salyers. I live at 105 Potter Drive. I've spoke at the last planning board meeting and plan to continue to speak about it. It's hard for me to compete an hour and 10 minutes against my 3 minutes, but I'm gonna do my best shot. Everything that was discussed tonight about the traffic analysis, we don't have that yet. If I'm not mistaken, at the last planning board meeting, we voted, y'all voted, not to approve, but you continued it to hear the traffic analysis. Well, we don't have that yet. We have the opinion of the young lady that was up here of what the traffic analysis is gonna say, could say, would say, or should say. But the fact of the matter is, we continued it till now to be able to see the traffic analysis report. We don't have that, but that's fine. There's a lot of different issues there. And again, I'm very personal, and I've made it very personal since day one that I live on Potter Drive. I understand the traffic analysis of the school and Main Street, and that the people that live in Forestdale, I am one of them, and there's several here, many more that did not come tonight because they're waiting for the town council meeting. But the bottom line comes down, we weren't asking anybody to fix the problems of Potter Drive, Forestdale, Mendenhall, or our neighborhood. We were asking that you looked at it from a point that you didn't dump another 250 cars on top of our already existing problem. Regardless, that property can be one of many things that she pointed out there, but it's not. There's a reason behind that. And if you take a good hard look at it, it's because of the cost factor of it. I don't doubt Berkeley's integrity. I understand it. I live right up the street from their current project, and they did a great job there. I don't doubt their integrity with the project. What I have is the comprehensive plan that I served on that committee. Thousands of dollars we spent, many countless volunteer hours that we spent, and now we're talking about revisiting it. Let's look at it again because it doesn't fit the narrative of what those apartments would be there. If that makes any sense, it doesn't fit the narrative. Yes, you can go through and you can pick out, they said 85%, but I could go through and pick out 85% that says it doesn't fit the narrative. There's my 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The chair of the board, which is me, opened the floor to the planning board for discussion after the last speaker. So are we ready to make a motion to recommend that the council approve, deny the rezoning request for 207, 209, 301, and 301?
Madam Chair, I think there are some more speakers.
Oh, Ms. Moore?
If you-
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me speak here tonight. And I've heard what our neighbor said, and I'm 100% for that. And I'm Stanton Calvarese, and my wife is with me here tonight. We live at 103 Forestdale Drive, and we've been there for like over 20 years. And from my front door, from my side window, I can see the property that the opposed proposition of the change in the rezoning, and we've seen it every day. And we've been right there, walking around Main Street, right in front of the proposed property. And so it's heavy on my heart to say that I'd hate to see any development there. But I have reasons. After prayerfully and thinking and thoughtfully about this procedure, about this, I feel like it should be no. on the rezoning change, because of the obvious answer is those details are not correct. The TIA is not correct about the traffic. My wife and I have witnessed it. We've seen it every day for the last 20 years. We've seen the traffic change, and that's the biggest issue, is it's going to produce a lot of traffic, and it's not going to be able to, no matter if you put in like 2 stoplights or you put in 2 crosswalks, you're going to have trouble because the traffic is going to be just so heavy, it's going to be a burden on the city. And despite all the money that can be gained from this development, I think it's important that we have to think about the ecology too. That 6.5 acres is a beautiful place, and it used to have the Potter House there, and I hate to see it developed. And then the location of the property, to make things real short, there's a lot of stuff I could say, but in 3 minutes, the location is not very good for housing, because you've got the train tracks on one side, you've got the West Main Street on the other side, and you have the trains going by all the time. Like I've looked at the last week, and on the average, a train runs with the horns blowing real loud. I can hear it right like it's next to my property at 103 4th Street. I can just hear it. It's not good for people to live in that kind of environment, to hear those trains go by. Like on the average, it's like they go by 4 times a day, and then you have ambulances running by the Main Street, and they're like 1 or twice a day. I think they go up to Pennyburg, but constantly you hear the noise from that. If you had at 138 units, you're going to have so much traffic, and plus, okay. Well, you get my point. I'm totally against it.
Thank you.
See the same thing.
Thank you so much. Do we have anyone else that would like to speak? Okay, now I'm going to open the floor for the planning board for discussion now. Planning board members make a motion to recommend the council approve, deny the rezoning request for 207, 209, 301, and 305 West Main Street from Main Street and Commercial Main Street transitional to conditional zoning residential Main Street transitional. Planning board members make a second motion, and then we'll do the roll call.
Respectfully, Mayor, I'm sorry, wrong job. Respectfully, Chair, I think we need to discuss a little bit before we actually go forward with a motion. I had a couple of thoughts. I think they do as well.
Okay.
Don't mean to step on you there. It's not my intention. I apologize. Please.
I'll let you start, John, yeah.
Listen, you copied my code. Go ahead, please. I insist.
Yeah, so I think the presentation was nice today. I have some doubts on some of the things that they stated today. I found it interesting that when they were talking about tax revenue, they picked the apartment complexes but only picked a single lot business. I don't think that's a fair comparison when you're talking about the potential for a multi-business lot. In regards to their statement for vertical mixed use, that was mentioned in our comp plan and is an easy change for our town. That's just a requirement for town council to request the town to create that ordinance and that to be voted on. So for that to be stated as something that's not going to happen in our lifetime, I think is a little crazy. Walkability, having the ability or stating that putting a gazebo up and people are going to walk down a brick sidewalk, people that don't live there are going to go sit in a gazebo, I think's a little strange. I've lived in and around a lot of different apartment complexes, and it's very rare that I've seen non-residents just go sit in public spaces at an apartment complex. As for, you're talking about planning for the future, I think that, the Main Street transitional phase there, as you're going into a more residential area, That seems like the perfect place for a mixed-use space. As you're leaving downtown, you're getting into a little bit of residential and commercial space, following into more residential space past that. Those are just my quick notes, so I will let somebody else take over from there.
I have a couple things as well. Yes, it's a mixed-use area, but what they're proposing is only one use. They're not proposing an actual mix as well. I'm with Robert on the gazebo thing. That's a little odd, just to go walking by as well and just go sit in someone else's property. Another thing I have here, when they cut off the picture a little bit, they made it look like that there's no residential homes in that area. I mean, you just walk a quarter mile south on Dillon, you have three neighborhoods right there as well. You go a little bit further out the picture, you can see the north side of the Forestdale East, and then you have, like, there's homes that they cut off as well. So I'd have to, just wanted to say both sides, that if people who weren't familiar with the picture, which I'm sure we all were, that there was a lot more homes in that surrounding area, on top of now other areas that are being built here in Jamestown.
I would agree that there is definitely plenty of residential areas surrounding the lot.
I had a question, but it's for the applicant. The site plan, the buildings, aesthetics of the mansion homes, are those to be identical or are those to look different? The picture presented, they had different styles.
Yes, the vision is that they would be different to emulate, organic, single-family homes that, of course, would all be different from their neighbors.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Am I able to ask about the traffic analysis? Just a couple of questions. I don't know if you're able to answer these or not, but how long is that period for? Is it like only a week? Is it 1 day?
What period?
The TIA, like what's the period of the
You
study?
talking about their study that they did?
Yeah,
You mean when of the data collection?
yeah.
aspect of it?
Do you know if the NCDOT or is it only for a month? Do you do it for 1 week only? Like how do you come up with your data?
Okay, sorry.
Like what's the length of period?
Gosh. I want to say they keep it out for 30 days. They keep the cameras up for 30 days, I believe.
Okay.
I think that's right. I can find out for certain, but it's not 1 day. They go and they put in cameras, they put in the trip cords, and then they go take them back down and count.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a window of time that's meant to capture, multiple 24-hour periods on different types of days and weekends. You famously hear not to do traffic studies when school's out, of course, but that's just one, changing condition of traffic flow, right? So yes, it's a long window, a longer window
excellent.
than 1 day, yeah.
I did want to make this comment, especially as it relates to what the ordinance says and doesn't say. I think in the last meeting, we briefly talked on buffers, and it was mentioned that buffers aren't required. However, they're still a best practice, regardless of whether it's, required, because of course the ordinance is the bare minimum, right? And of course, we're gonna look at it from the perspective of what's the maximum for the community, right? It's the bare bones, minimum as it relates to buffers being required or not. However, as a best practice, right, that should still be included.
Which is a great example of one of the conditions we've added. We've got 2 large-scale buffers on both the east and west side
Okay.
to that point, because we did want to go over and above the ordinance and utilize best practices. So thank you for pointing that out.
And the buffer was there with intent of both breaking away from the railroad as well as are we talking?
That's actually a different, when I say buffers, I'm meaning on the east and the west.
I'm sorry.
To screen and separate, if you will, from our neighboring built neighbors. But yes, I guess the one to the rear is also a buffer in that, the railroad has a requirement of a 100-foot right-of-way. Its easement is 100 feet. And so that, we're fully out of that, so that all remains green as well,
Oh, so-
which creates a buffer in and of itself.
Got it, got it. That's all I had.
Thank you.
There were a couple of thoughts I had relative to what's been mentioned tonight. First and foremost, as far as the traffic analysis, to be fair to the applicant, I can tell you, having been on the council for years, that typically a true traffic analysis is not done to completion because it costs tens of thousands of dollars until it's been passed by the planning board and gets to the council. At that point, what happens is that a traffic analysis is done in depth, where they can map out exactly how many cars go by this spot at this time. So the fact that we're getting more of an estimate based off of traffic patterns that have been seen and what's been culled together thus far makes perfect sense. I was on the planning board before I ever was on council. There's never been a point that there's been a traffic analysis done for a planning board per se. It's just, it's cost prohibitive based on the nature of what they do. And it's not fair to the developer because they could have just spent, I don't know, throw a number out there and say $30,000 on something that just got shut down, and now they're out $30,000. So just to be totally fair about that, as I was looking through the trip comparison, and the other thing that stands out is talking about the amount of cars that come through Jamestown. Again, the fact that we have a bypass now that we did not have in years past shows a reduction of cars on the order of thousands of cars per day at this point, just at the intersection where the school is at. Because we still have the children, I know my children went there, and I can certainly speak to the pattern challenges as far as getting in, getting out. They've gotten smarter over the years in terms of directing one way. They didn't always do that. So, you know, there's certain aspects that have been taken and adapted as they've come. When it comes to our comprehensive plan, one thing that comes to mind to me, having been on council when a lot of this was gestating, was that the purpose of it is a guideline. And that guideline is to set, in that moment in time, what is the highest and best use for property, X, Y, Z, whatever it is that we're looking for and we're looking to do, and what should that look like. As population changes, as costs inevitably go up, as needs vary, that plan is subject to change as well. It'll evolve. It's not meant to say, hey, we're going to put a plan in and then, ha-ha, we changed it on you. It's, we have grown, we have developed, we have modified. Here's what we're doing now in relationship to the things that have been discussed, much as we're doing this evening. The fundamental principle of what a planning board is supposed to do is to take whatever an applicant brings to the table and says, we have run this by your town planner, we have talked about it at length with the town manager, we have talked about it with whomever, and it varies from town to town based on the staff. And based on discussions with them, this is what we have presented, and then it has to be vetted by, in this case, Jose and Matthew and Katie to some degree, and you know, put together and said, is this a plan that is viable for Jamestown? Does it fall within enough of the things that are envisioning Jamestown to be workable enough that we can go through the planning board? Planning board says, yes, this is a plan. It is a good plan. It is not exactly covering the number of trees I want over here, or, you know, what I would like to see as far as the building over here, but it is a solid plan. And then we vote on that, and it goes to the council, and then the council chews on it ad nauseum. I can say that having been through the Johnson property, which was such fun, and I'm being sarcastic, but going through that entire process, which took years, literally, I don't think that this is not on that scope. But the thing I'm trying to emphasize is that as you look at, is it consistent with the comp plan? We've been told by our partners that work at Town Hall, yes, it is. Is it something that makes sense from appropriateness for Jamestown based on parts and parcel, or at least pieces of Envision Jamestown? Yes, it does. Are we dealing with somebody who is a reputable developer who's established themselves previously with Courtyard Commons, which quite frankly was a burnout fire hole? I remember what it looked like in 12 and 11. Nobody even wanted to drive down that side of Main Street, candidly. It was terrible. So I can relate to mixed use and wanted to see more of it. One time I wrote a letter to the editor and I talked about wanting a restaurant out on the lake by the golf course. I even did a picture on online and damn it, they didn't print the thing. And I still get ribbed about it. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make here is that, we're being presented with a plan. It is not for us to decide up or down vote on the plan. It's just about, is it a solid plan? Can we send it to council and say, council, just based on what we see, we recommend that you take this into consideration because it has taken into consideration a lot of factors. It's taken into consideration that the developer is willing to make concessions and put in a sidewalk when they don't have to, and do things that look at ingress, egress, whereby, like with the, God forbid me for saying it, but with the Bojangles plan way back when, they were wanting to put a road right on Potter and have traffic come out from school and let's go straight to a drive-through. And it was a nightmare. And this has even been discussed because they want it to be over here, and on this end towards the gas station, they only want it to go one way, I think. So, that being said, I'm going to make the motion that we recommend to council to approve the rezoning request for 207, 209, 301, and 305 West Main Street, and commercial Main Street transitional to conditional zoning residential Main Street transitional. And I hope y'all understand my thoughts and reasoning behind it.
I just want to comment on John's, all of his comments he made, that I have to agree with the purpose of the planning board. I also have to agree with the developer and the cost. I spent 40 years working at the federal level at HUD with developers, seeing all of this come together, sometimes attending town meetings across North Carolina. It's a lot, and it costs a lot. To see a TIA at this point, a developer is not going to spend that kind of money to present to a planning board, that the planning board's role is a zoning issue, that they're considering the zoning issue and they're going to make a recommendation to council, which council makes the decision going forward for the town. They're not going to do that because, like John said, those thousands of dollars. We've received a presentation tonight based on DOT statistics that any of us could sit down and call that up on a computer and verify those numbers. And I appreciate the applicant coming tonight and giving us that information. So with all of that said, John has made the motion. I'm going to second the motion for approval.
Darlene Fetty,
Roll call.
Yes, I'm sorry, roll call.
John Capes,
Yes.
Robert Garland,
No.
Brent Gomez,
No.
Madam Chair,
No.
the motion fails.
I would like to make the motion that the proposed zoning amendment be rejected based on the following. The proposed zoning amendment is not consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan of the town. of
Mr. Garland, I need an initial motion to deny the rezoning. So a motion to recommend the denial of the rezoning. And a second.
I second.
Then I'd like to make a motion that that the proposed zoning amendment.
Yep, sorry. Sorry, let me catch up for just a second. Darlene Fetty,
Yes.
this is a motion to recommend denial.
Oh,
Recommend but deny.
okay. So, yes,
That would mean that you agree to recommend to the town council to deny.
yes.
Okay. Just want to be clear. John?
No.
Robert?
Yes.
Brant?
Yes.
All right, the motion passes. And now we'll need the inconsistency statement in this case.
Just making sure. I didn't want to start reading again. I make a motion that the proposed zoning amendment be rejected based on the following. The proposed zoning amendment is not consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan of the town of Jamestown. The planning board finds the proposed zoning amendment is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan because it does not sufficiently align with the development pattern and intensity envisioned for the portion of West Main Street. And the proposed zoning amendment is not reasonable. The planning board considers the proposed zoning amendment to be unreasonable because the report of the town staff finding the proposed zoning amendment to be unreasonable is adopted by reference. The board further finds that the proposed zoning amendment is unreasonable because the scale and intensity of the development may not be compatible with the surrounding uses or supportive of the area's existing character. And the proposed zoning amendment is in the public interest. The board considers the proposed zoning amendment to be against the public interest because the report of the town staff finding the proposed zoning amendment to be against the public interest is adopted by reference. And the board further finds that the proposed zoning amendment is against the public interest because the proposal may not promote the orderly and coordinated growth anticipated for the corridor at this time.
Need a second?
I second.
I'm gonna vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
The motion passes.
All right. Katie, has anyone signed up to speak during the public comments period?
Nobody signed up.
Motion to adjourn.
The chair of the planning board call the motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.